10 things you should never do in the state of Florida. Every year, over 100 million people come to the state of Florida, and they do some things that are very questionable. So if you're visiting Florida from another state or another country, you may not want to miss this video because some of the things we're going to talk about on today's video can get you arrested or in some very serious trouble. Number 1 is touch or feeding any wildlife. That includes giving animals water, manatees, alligators. If you touch these animals, you can receive fines and in some cases, felony criminal charges. So the next time you see a manatee, an alligator, a bear, or any other type of animal in Florida, make sure that you do not feed, touch, or interact with it. You might get away with giving seagulls some popcorn on the beach, but anything more than that is not only seriously frowned upon, but can actually catch you very serious criminal charges. Florida's wildlife and ecosystem is unique and it's unlike anything you may have ever experienced, but you will have to be very careful not to violate the wildlife regulations. FWC is the Florida Wildlife Conservation. You can go to their website and get all types of information about animals and how you can or cannot interact with them, because if you violate those laws, you can find yourself in a world of trouble. Number 2 is fishing without a license. If you're going to be engaging in fishing in the state of Florida, you're going to have to acquire a fishing license, again, from the FWC. And the fees for out-of-state people and out-of-country people are significantly higher than it is for residents. Fishing without a license can get you a fine for doing it. However, if you catch a fish and keep it that is out of season or out of size, you can actually find yourself being arrested. The size and rules for fishing in Florida change all the time, and even myself, who grew up in Florida and spent hours a week fishing, struggle to keep up with these changes. One of the best ways you can get to fish in Florida at a lower cost and actually be able to find good fish is if you go and hire a Florida fishing captain and they have a license that will allow you to fish without a license. While the fees for these charter boats can be kind of excessive, the cost that you're going to spend to buy fishing gear to get a fishing license, you might as well just pay a professional to take you to the spots where the fish are, and then they will know what you can and cannot keep, taking a little bit of the complication and cost away from your fishing adventures. But if you do decide that you're going to fish by yourself on your own and not pay a fishing captain, at least, number 3, do not use freshwater fishing lures in the salt water. I have a YouTube channel called Jose Likes Fishing, and while I don't upload to that channel anymore, on Jose Likes Fishing, I teach you the lures, the places, and everything you need to get started with fishing in Florida. A lot of people go fishing directly on the beach, and of course they catch nothing. A place like this, near a dock or near some structure, if you throw a shrimp out there, unavoidably something is going to find it. So many times I see somebody from the Midwest trying to catch saltwater fish with freshwater lures. They'll never get a single bite. Number 4 is Speedos. For men, if you are coming to the beaches in Florida, I don't care what part of the world you're from, and if you go to the beach in your underwear or if you wear a man thong to the beach, you're going to have to wear nothing less than shorts to go to the beach. Swim shorts are the go-to piece for men in Florida on the beach. While it may be appropriate in Europe or other parts of the world, if you come to the United States, particularly Florida, please do not wear Speedos. It's not illegal, it needs to be. You should do everything possible to be as respectful for other people. And if you are a man, particularly an old hairy man, the last thing people want to see on the beach is you wearing a thong. The fact you're the only person doing it could be a clue that maybe it's out of place, or maybe the fact that people give you nasty looks. Regardless of the fact, people think it's okay to come to Florida as a man and wear a Speedo to the beach. It's considered almost borderline offensive, and while nobody's going to be rude and tell you something about it, it definitely creeps the crap out of most people. Number 5 is playing music loudly on the beach. You're gonna see a lot of other people doing this. Most of them are tourists just like you. It may be appropriate in other parts of the world, but for the most part in Florida, if you're the one blasting loud music, specifically for hours on end, you're probably not making a lot of friends on the beach. If you're in Miami on a Saturday or Sunday, or Miami Beach, or another beach that's already packed on a weekend, let's say a Saturday, it might be more appropriate. And people do take radios to the beach to listen to it at a normal volume. And there are beaches where people play music all the time and it's almost normal, but try to use a little bit of discretion and figure out if this is the type of beach where people are blasting music or the type of beach where it just looks out of place. And while playing music for a short period of time may be okay, if you're going to set up camp on the beach and spend the entire day blasting music, it could probably become offensive to the other people who are just trying to relax. Sure, you're a tourist and you're trying to have a great time, but a lot of people only get one day off of the week, and that may be their day to go to the beach and relax. And if there's 20 people blasting music loudly, they can't have a good time. Even worse, many times the music is beyond vulgar. If you're at the beach with your family and kids, you may not want to expose them to Bad Bunny talking about La Cucaracha. Puerca, ella es una puerca, puerca, mira qué cosa más puerca, puerca. So if you're going to go to the beach and you're going to play some music, maybe on a weekend it's okay, but if you're going to be blasting music all day long on the beach, and on top of that the music is offensive and vulgar, you're definitely not making any friends. Una brasileira muy gostosa, pa, pa, tá gostosa. Brasileira muy gostosa. Que coisa. Number 6 is make comments about race. Generally, people in the United States are very timid about how racist they can be. I'm going to guess in European countries, people are more vocal. But here in the United States, it's part of etiquette not to talk about those things in public with complete strangers in a crowded place. It's a very racist country, but we can't talk about it. That makes perfect sense. Racial issues are a very sensitive problem for Americans. So if you're coming from another country, your best bet is to avoid those topics. No matter how reasonable you may think your argument sounds, nobody wants to hear it. You're going to sound offensive and insensitive. So if you're visiting the United States, and in particular Florida, just avoid making any type of racial comment. More on conversation etiquette. Number 7, asking people how much money they make. Now, I'm a very personable person, so people ask me questions that perhaps they wouldn't ask any regular person. But let me just tell you, this is possibly the worst question you could ever ask somebody. And as a tourist, you're almost inclined to want to ask somebody how much they make when you visit another country. I'm probably guilty of doing it myself, but you do not want to ask American people exactly how much money they make. If you're really curious about the economics of living in the United States, maybe I can make a video about that for you guys, or you could just ask people how much would it take to live in this area. Or perhaps you could ask, what would one of these apartments on the right rent for, and what type of income would living there cost? But particularly asking an individual, how much do you make, is a question that most Americans are never going to answer. Just like racism is a topic you don't want to talk about with Americans, how much money they make is definitely not up for conversation. So if you're visiting Florida from another country, just don't directly ask people how much money they make, because it's a very awkward question. I know in other parts of the world that's a completely normal question to ask, but in the United States, where people are being judged and there's so much social issues going on, that's possibly not the best question to ask. And even when I try to explain to people what an apartment costs or what housing costs, they just want to know, how much do you personally make? And that's a very awkward question to ask a stranger. And a lot of people ask me this because I'm a YouTube blogger, so it's kind of an odd occupation. But just trust me, that question or any question about finances, be very tactful and indirect about how you ask, because if you're asking an individual, they may be seriously turned off by it. Number 8 is wear deodorant. It's not every group of tourists that has this problem, but there's one particular group of tourists that I'm not going to get too specific about that just doesn't understand about deodorant. If you're coming to the state of Florida to enjoy our beaches, you may notice that we don't freaking stink. And this is definitely considered offensive. In the United States, body odor is very offensive. So if you're coming to our beaches, hotels, make sure that you don't smell. Also, even the food that you cook, if you're cooking it in a hotel, that it doesn't have very strong odors, as body odor and the smell of food in a public place like at a hotel or out in public is considered kind of offensive. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a hotel and the smell from the last person that was there is still present. Unless you're in a trashy place like Asheville, North Carolina, this is not acceptable. So if you can't find the ethnic foods that you're used to before you mix 50 spices into a hotel room kitchen, consider just taking pizza for takeout. I know it sounds like I'm being kind of harsh and cruel on this video, but if you're a tourist coming to Florida, I don't want you to look like a fool or offend people without even knowing it. So while this video is a little bit touchy, I want you to know that I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm just trying to tell you what other people are afraid to tell you. Number 9 is blocking sidewalks to take very elaborate photos. I don't understand why in other parts of the world this seems to be a thing to do, but in the United States, if we're just going to take a photo, we take a simple selfie. We don't really block an intersection of a sidewalk or a busy area to take very elaborate photos around a bunch of other people. If you're coming to take photos in the United States, make them casual between people as selfies, something nice and simple. You don't have to try to stop an entire sidewalk to take a photo, set up camera stands. All that makes you look very awkward. It also goes against the etiquette of respecting public spaces. So if you're out in public, try not to take over an entire area just for a specific photo. Photos don't have to be that professional. We like casualness here in the United States, so if you just take a quick selfie with your cell phone, I use iPhones to make most of my videos. The quality is incredible, so you don't need to set up a very elaborate photo. I know that may be important for you where you live, but just keep in mind that while you're taking down this whole entire sidewalk to yourself, everybody's looking at you like you're a completely inconsiderate idiot. And to make it worse, they seem to just drag on these photo shoots and take 15-20 minutes to do it. That's really almost borderline disrespecting the public space. Number 10 is leaving litter on the beach. I recently got a metal detector and I find spots where there'll be 10 to 15 beer can caps, all the same brand in the same area. I don't know what the etiquette is on the beach wherever you come from, but we consider beaches almost like a sacred space. Ironically, despite the fact people have many variety of foods and drinks on the beach, it's always the same exact brands of items that I find, which would suggest that the people that are littering these things come from a specific background. As you travel to different places, people are watching you, the tourist, and making assumptions about your nationality based on the way you behave. Look at yourself as a tourist, almost as an ambassador for the country you're coming from. And if you do things that disgruntle and upset the people in the places you go to, well, those people are going to treat people from your country with despair based on the way you've behaved. Well, everywhere you go is going to have different rules and regulations. No particular thing is right or wrong. It's not like blasting music on the beach endemically makes you a horrible person. In the United States, the age of consent is 18. In other parts of the world, it may be 14 or 16. So rules vary from place to place, but those rules are the ones you should respect in the place you're going to. Whatever the rules or the etiquette is in the place you are, that is the norms you should live by. One of the things that I enjoy the most about living in the United States is that it's a country that has a lot of rules, and those rules generally make the United States a great place to live. And sometimes those rules can seem unreasonable, but they're there for a reason. And just remember that you, the tourist, are an ambassador for the state or the country that you're coming from. And if you act a complete fool, you're only making yourself and the place you come from look bad. Alright, so here's an opportunity for everybody to hit the comments. What is one thing that tourists do in the particular place where you live that you really dislike? I recently visited Canada, and I noticed that in Canada, people are very quiet out in public places, and they definitely do not blast music from their cars like we would here in the United States. So I recognized it, and I didn't do it myself. All those things I'm used to doing here in the United States, absolutely. So it's a learning curve for all tourists, but if you're coming to Florida, those are 10 things that I see tourists doing all the time that are definitely frustrating and in many occasions can actually get you into a lot of trouble. I mean, for the most part, a lot of beverages are not even legally allowed on the beach, so the fact that you're finding these caps is almost an indication that people are doing it. Mostly, if they're doing it, they're finding a very discreet way of going about it. Some people just sit there and drink as much as they want in public, knowing that it's not allowed. A lot of times things are illegal, but we tend to look the other way because it's not that big of a deal. However, what may not be a big deal to you, the tourists, could definitely be an offense to the locals. A lot of times, the locals will make exceptions for tourists and allow them to do things that the locals cannot do. We all want to be welcoming and understanding, but there's times where you should really notice that whatever the crap you're doing kind of stands out. Hairy men in Speedos. And well, the worst part about it is if you tell them discreetly and respectfully, hey bro, you know we don't wear this in the United States, the answer always is the same. Well, back in my country, I do it. Well, now you're not in your country. You're going to have to respect the rules of the locals. Respect definitely goes a long way. And if you respect other people, they'll be certain to respect you.